Welcome to Man, gentlemen. My number one goal on this call, on every call, is to connect with you, to connect with who you want to be in the world, this awakening that you're having of what's really important to me. And maybe your wife is separated from you right now. Maybe she's your ex right now, or maybe you're terrified because you just heard, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And what does that mean about you as a man? What does that mean about your worth and your value? And whose fault is this? Whose quote unquote fault is it that things went the way that they did? And often, many women, because they are in their feminine, they are in their feminine energy and everything that that means instinctually, everything that means to them as far as who they are as a person, as a woman in the world, is driven by their instinctual protective mechanisms. And a lot of that is they don't want to feel shamed or wronged by the tribe, by the community, by the tribe, because of course in the past that would mean exile, and a woman in the wilderness back in tribal days had very little chance of surviving. A man may have a higher chance, but the tribe doesn't really care. Here's a sobering fact: is the tribe doesn't really see men as having a lot of innate value. We could talk about this another time, but evolutionarily, men are expendable, right? And evolutionarily, a woman has innate value because she's able to have babies, and eggs are more valuable than sperm. And this isn't an evolutionary psychology lecture tonight, of course, but then full circle back to, well, why is she blaming me for everything? Why is it often that we hear, or you have experienced, and I've experienced this, that the woman is blaming everything on you, that she put everything into one basket and you've betrayed her or let her down, or she's been thinking about rethinking the past and she's been mistreated all along the way and she was quiet and lost herself. And while I can appreciate the feelings that she's having and that's her truth in the moment, it isn't true that it's all your fault. So when she says our marriage breakdown is all my fault, is she right? This is about 100% on my side and 100% on her side. 100% being the masculine with frame and emotional safety, skills of emotional safety and leadership and intimacy. And on her side, she has all of her responsibilities of opening to you, blooming through the pain that she has from the past, or the pain, the stuckness that she feels in this moment, and sharing that difficulty in blooming with you. And we talk about that on the C Note show extensively with Cynthia Cruz. But here we're to talk about us as men and to ask questions and to share celebrations and share challenges with each other. So she says our marriage breakdown is all my fault. Is she right? The Dalai Lama said, when you think everything is someone's fault, you will suffer a lot. When you realize that everything springs only from yourself, you will learn both peace and joy. And preparing for this call tonight, I looked at this actually in a different way. If I think about this as myself, like if I think everything is my fault, then I will suffer a lot. If I try to take responsibility for other people, their feelings, how they act, if everything I think is my fault, I'm going to suffer a lot, even if I think everything is my fault, regardless of whether she's suffering or not. And then when I realize that everything springs only from myself or themselves or herself, I will learn both peace and joy from the release of my own guilt, from the release of my own nice guy shame that I could have perfectly made everything work out, okay, which I never had control of in the first place. I never had control of whether it was going to work out perfectly. I never had full control of whether I was going to be in the same household as my children their entire childhood, which of course is very painful to say. And I never had full control over whether she was going to leave or not, or whether that caused my finances an upheaval. I would have liked to think that I was safe, nice guy, safe from those potentialities, but no one is safe from those things. And we're here to pull back the curtain with one another on our man-to-man calls, man-to-man call right now. We want the freedom to live life and relationship with passion. We want the freedom to feel confident within ourselves, no matter what, the freedom to make the most important promises to ourselves. So I showed this on the earlier call today, and I want to show this again now. And I'll ask everyone here, every man that's here, to post in the chat an answer to a quick question I have right now. This is the three sides of the Stoic triangle. The first side is virtue, which means our values, our boundaries, knowing what we want. The second side is what can I control and what can I not control, and being aware of those things, what I can control and what I cannot control. Number 3 is taking responsibility and taking action based off of my virtue, based off of what I can control and what I cannot control. So you may not know what a boundary is at all. And then it's hard to take responsibility if you have no idea what your boundaries are, or it's possible to take action if you don't know where your boundaries lie. So once you, for instance, were to figure out your boundaries, or to realize, wow, I'm allowing someone to cross a boundary in my life, then it's your responsibility to take calibrated action on that virtue, on that decided or fleshed out virtue. So here's my question. There, I'm sure, are many successes in every one of our lives, and I honor every one of you as a man, of course. Aside from that, what's a challenge? What's the biggest challenge that you faced? What was let's say, a weakness of yours that you faced in your relationship, or maybe your past relationship, if you're past that now, in one of these 3 areas? So which one of these 3 areas is or was the most difficult for you as a man? Knowing your values, your boundaries, what you want? Is it knowing what you can control and knowing what you cannot control? Like the nice guy thinks he can control everything. Or was it number 3, taking responsibility for these things and then making some action happen, taking action? Which one of these is, let's say, a weak point of you right now or in the past? Your virtue, your knowing what you can control, or taking action and taking responsibility for action? So post that in the chat. Which one of those is a weak point of yours, either now or in your past relationship? Post it into the chat. Yeah, Lon, shame goes back to the beginning of time for not having worth. Yeah. Actually, Lon, if you don't mind coming on in and talking about that, it reminds me of religious conversations I've had, for instance, with men or with Sven Masterson. I didn't grow up religious. I do consider myself spiritual now, spiritual in terms of conscious awareness and what are the old childhood triggers that are coming up within me, right? Shame being one of them. So when you think about shame, Lon, what comes up for you? Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I was kidding when I said it, but I was thinking, when you said expendable, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is that I think sometimes as men we don't, that whole idea that our value and worth is it's an inside game, right?
Yeah.
But we certainly try to get it from other validations. And I just kind of thought of when you said that, it was like it's true. I mean, we don't send the women to war. We send men. Men go fight. And I'm not saying that women haven't fought in the past, but for the most part, it's the men who are. I just kind of like that idea of we are. It only takes one guy. If you had 50 women and one guy, you could take care of business. And
Yeah.
continue to expound. I mean, you could continue to, but if you had 50 guys and one woman, you'd have a really slow growth pattern. And I think that's what I'm talking about, is that shame of not feeling our worth and value, and kind of feeling like, oh gosh, I really am, I really am kind of disposable and not really necessary. And so to me, it was more of a joke, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, I appreciate you. First of all, I appreciate you saying that, or shooting a joke at that. But throughout history, we were expendable, right? It's like, okay, let's just try to help the women and children survive, pass on our lineage, pass on to the next generation. What can we do just to
well, and I think we made ourselves expend. I mean, we subjugate ourselves to service. I mean, it's a typical nice guy thing. We do things. I mean, who's the hardest person to love? I think as you go through this process and you learn things, like I can give unconditional high regard to the grocery store clerk. I can give it to my ex. I can give it to my children. I can give it to men in this group. The hardest person to give it to is me.
Yeah.
Because I'm the guy. It's like, I don't know if I'm worth it yet, but every other guy here, I'm like, I see, this is a great thing about you, but then turn that on yourself and try to get a guy to say something about himself that is positive, and a guy will start to be like, well,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's some deep rooted there that we're not, other people can have it, but we can't. With that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to get on a soapbox about cultural messages and why that may be, but coaching is about recognizing where our stories come from and shifting our stories to serve us, right? It's an inside job. And it's pretty incredible, actually. I want to put this on the table too. I study a ton of psychology and relationship dynamics, as you might expect, and I have for many years. And Red Pill, for instance, Red Pill talks about evolutionary psychology. Red Pill says something similar, that women have innate value because babies, right? Because eggs and because babies. And men only have value in what they do and achieve in the world. And here in this group and in, communities that we know, we don't seek our value based off of external achievements in the world, because that is going to end at some point. Or what if I'm injured? Or what if I don't produce as much as the guy next to me? Does that mean I'm a piece of shit? Does that mean I'm effed from the beginning? But knowing our own value from the inside, it takes a lot of mojo to own who you are, regardless of your achievements in the outside world. Do you find that to be true? I find that to be true, Lon.
Absolutely. And then what I like to do is bring that back to, and I think the guy that wrote best about this is Viktor Frankl. I mean, to me, he is the prime example of somebody who basically said, you can take it, you can take everything away from you can take it, but you are not taking me from me. And the thing was, even in those Nazi concentration camps, they were like, dude is unfuckwithable. Like, don't, you know what I mean? Like, don't mess with it, and that to me says something about when you can find that within yourself, and you find that, in case you can't tell, I've been listening to a lot of John Wineland lately, and he talks about that same thing where he's like, it's got to be here. He said, and then when you have that presence, he said, I was listening to something he talked the other day about dating apps. He said, you don't need a fucking dating app. When you get that, he said, they will just come. He said, the world will be drawn to that kind of person because they're so rare, that it's an essence in you. And I think that's what we're all in the end trying to find, is that essence of I'm okay, not I'm gonna be okay. I'm okay. Right. I think
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to segue with you, Lon. I want to actually ask you about this. I found this quote about an hour ago from Freud. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. So to take the responsibility to see ourselves as free of shame, as free of rocks in our backpack, as free of our ex's judgment of us, to claim our own freedom takes responsibility, and that can cause fear. Like all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm fully responsible for myself. I'm no longer unconsciously putting the blame on someone else. I'm not playing the victim, or I'm not just riding my parents' expectation or cultural expectation. But if I do take full responsibility for my freedom, was there fear there for you, Lon?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think what that is it's easier to, it's easier to not accept responsibility that I'm the source of my happiness, that I'm the source of my value and worth, and to put it on something else, what somebody thinks about me, what a woman thinks about me, what you think about me, what this other men in this group think about me. You know, it's easier to do that than it is to accept that I'm responsible for it, because then I have somebody else that I get to blame, if, and I think that's kind of what I think that's why you find men that will wallow in what happened to them, and they won't rise out of it, because it's easier to stay there, because then they have a reason for being that way. Instead of saying, you know what, I am okay, that I'm, again, I use the word unfuckwithable, and it's that nobody else can mess with who I am, because, and I think that's what you said, it's the fear. When you get to own it, then nobody else, then you're responsible for it. I mean, and you
Yeah.
have to, and that can be really scary, because now you're not relying on somebody else. What I was going to type into the chat, for me, it was control, because I needed somebody else in my marriage to fill my cup.
Mm.
Absolutely, I needed them to. And what I've come to realize is that, nobody else can only I can fill my cup. And when I fill my cup, then then it overflows and I can give it to other people.
Mm.
But again, I think that's a rare man. And again, that's the word I would take there is ownership. If that's, you have to own who you are and be okay with that. The flaws and the warts and the wrinkles, and gratitude for that, I think, is, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Thanks, Lon. Good to see you,
Yeah,
bud.
thank
Very
you.
cool. Yeah. So I'll take a look in the chat here, and then I want to bounce back over to this quote from Freud. Does anyone feel like they are maybe coasting away from freedom and responsibility because it's maybe not knowingly, it's unconscious, or let's make it conscious now. Maybe it's easier, or there's less fear around still being able to blame someone else, or still being able to say a story of why it didn't work out, or to be worried about what the neighbors are going to think. Does anyone feel like they're coasting away from responsibility and freedom because of fear? Go ahead and come on in. Unmute yourself and come in. Does anyone feel like they're coasting away from responsibility because of fear of any kind in any place in your life? Unmute yourself. Yeah, Mohammed, please.
Yeah, I mean, I feel one of the areas that immediately brings me stress is always finances. And for some reason, I just coast. I do nothing about it. I just worry about it and do nothing about it. I know I can do better, but it just creeps me out. I guess I'm afraid of, there's many things that make me afraid. I think maybe I'm afraid because I don't have the financial knowledge and skill to manage my money right. I'm afraid maybe that if I drew boundaries and budgets in the house, family members are going to be upset. And I'm a nice guy and I always want to provide and always make everybody happy. So the financial, I mean, among the many other things that bring fear to me, this is one area that, as a result, brings other additional fears along with it that may not directly be related to finances. Do you feel like that is that relevant to the question you're
Yeah,
asking?
absolutely.
Like I'm coasting because I'm coasting. Like I feel like paralyzed. Well, am I doing much about it? Every day I write it. Got to do something, and I just don't even know where to start. And
yeah, very valid. Well, one thing when I was in your spot, this is, this is advice, which I try not to give too much advice, but just some beginner advice is I just wrote down everything that I spent over the last 3 months, like categorize everything that I actually already spent. So you go into the past and there's no refuting the bank statement. Like, this is how much food, this is how much utility costs, this is what I, blew buying a toy. This is what, like when I want to trip out of town. And I just recorded retroactively. So that way there's no pain of trying to set a future budget or trying to guess or anything like that. So that would be where I would start. And even that, I don't know about you, but I was at a point, this is a long time ago in my life now, it's maybe 20 years ago, but I even had fear just logging into my bank, username. Yeah. Just like your pulse starts going, get like sweaty. It's almost like you're crossing your fingers, hoping it's above a certain fucking number that doesn't matter. Hopefully it's not zero, but it's like, okay, is it only 3 figures today? Is there 4 figures in there? Like, yeah. And so that's how I broke myself of this. I honestly took responsibility of whatever was going to come up. And I logged in every day. This has been a long time now, but I logged in every day until I didn't have that visceral bodily reaction anymore. And I wasn't trying to, there was no doing, there was no like budget or anything. I didn't change my spending during this time I'm talking about. I just logged in every day and noticed what was coming up in my body as I was logging in. And then another day I would say, all right, it's a time for me to get a hold of my finances, right? Like, how can I see this as an empowering act that I'm doing? And then just writing down what I spent over the previous 3 months. That was how I started. Yeah. So with you, go ahead, please.
That's excellent advice. Did you struggle with trying to control or budget or put boundaries on other people's spending or spending you did with family? I mean, if it was just me, it would have been way much easier. It's just my own bank account. But if others are also spending off it, or you have put obligations on yourself to spend on certain things, and now you have to take them out, take them away. No more this or no more that from now on. You have to face that.
That's a good question. So when I was doing this, it was for myself in my little story there. But to answer your question, I have done this, of course, at various times with a family. Now my son's out of the house. So he's moved out of the house. He's 19. So finances have shifted again, depending on what health insurance I was getting or how much money I was making, which I've made a lot of money and then very little money and then a lot of money again, at different times. What are my investments? So what I would do is I would take care of my own fear first. I would do what I just described for me first before I brought this to anyone else in my family, because I know that I'm the leader, I'm the energetic leader of the family, that my kids and my woman are going to resonate off of anything they feel from me around this, around fear and such. Once I was through that and I already had the past 3 months written down, I wouldn't just come to my wife or whoever it is you're going to speak with. I wouldn't just come to my wife with like a spreadsheet and, okay, I've got, a pocket protector. And it's like, we're going to make all these big changes now. Like, she's going to flip the fuck out. She's not going to know what's going on. So you have to start it with an emotional conversation about the vision for the relationship, the vision for the third entity, the relationship. The feminine in the relationship, so your woman, I'm assuming for every man here. So the feminine is always going to see any concern as being a threat to her safety and the relationship. Anything, like any concern of anything happening, she's going to viscerally feel it's a threat to the relationship and to her safety. Okay? So if I go, any change, if I go and say, hey, we're going to change the budget, immediately it's going to, yeah, you're nodding, yeah. So I would first go and say, for instance, I'm curious, I'm going to ask you right now, what was the ethos of spending in the past, your budgeting? Was it just free for all? There was no, theme?
Most part.
What's
Yeah,
that?
if I can
Yeah.
almost afford it, then I will do it because I want to be nice
Yeah.
to
Okay.
those around me.
Yeah. So if I can almost afford it, if the credit card will accept it, and if I can be perceived as a nice guy, then I okay. So there's no relationship ethos for the money, though. There's no, this is the tool of money that we're going to use for such and such vision in the future. It doesn't sound like that was the case, but that's what you want to do. Anything, and this is for anything with your woman that you're wanting to question or challenge or boundary or change the strategy, is it's got to be toward a vision for good things of the relationship. Whether it's deepening, whether it's more adventure, whether it's increased security, whether it's, retirement or for the children, or this is the kind of parents we can be for our kids. It has to be for the entity in between the two of you. You're not doing it for her, like you're a nice guy and pandering, and you're not doing it because you say so. I don't think that's going to fly with most women today. But it's for this vision that you want to move toward. And the insinuation is you want to massage this vision with her. However, this is a guiding light for you. Or I want to shoot for the stars. Which star do we want to choose? But I'm not shooting anything lower than the stars any longer. Before, in the past, I might own up to, in the past, I used money frivolously, and I didn't look as far into the future as I now know that I want to. And so I've shifted my view. I've shifted my view above the horizon, above the end of the rainbow, to the stars. And I want to talk with you about that, because this matters so much to our vision as a couple, our vision as a family, our vision as individuals, the fun and security and growth that we can have through this, the freedom that this will bring, to have this strategy together, to have this vision together, to shoot for the stars. And I bring in the metaphor or the story because that brings so much more emotion to the situation, right? It brings more freedom to the conversation with her. It's not just numbers anymore. It's the story of shooting for the stars and what are we doing together, and the adventure and the fun and the security and the growth that it can bring.
That's excellent. Does she need to share in the vision, or is it I set the vision and lead and she buys? Is it kind of like
that's a good question?
shared,
Yeah.
hey, let us shoot, or hey, this is where I'm shooting, do you want to ride? You know what I mean?
That's a good question. And that's more complicated depending on the sort of masculine presence that you have, or the masculine presence that she has always had. Or maybe she's a woman that it's often I hear men talk about their woman has felt a lack of control throughout the whole marriage. And so now the woman wants more control. But really what that means is she wants to be seen, and emotionally, she wants to feel that he cares about her ideas and her opinions and her emotions. Not that she wants to be in control of the decision. She doesn't want to be ultimately responsible for the decision, but she wants to feel like that we care. Now, to your point, though, if a decision has to be made, regardless, you are going to be like, you as the man, every man here I think knows, you're going to be held accountable. So do you want to be responsible, or do you want to try to make her responsible? Because either way, you're going to end up being accountable. She's going to make it your fault because you're the man, and okay. So, and we take things on our shoulders. That's what our broad shoulders are made for, is carrying the world, right? Like Atlas. So we're physically structured to carry struggle, and she's going to put that on us one way or the other. Now, if you were to make a decision that she may not be happy with in the moment, it has to be a decision toward that higher good for the relationship, toward this vision in the relationship. And my hope is that you can have some common ground on the vision without talking about the how, right? It's the where are we going? What's our why? not worrying about the how. If she tries to bring the how into the visioning conversation, really split those two things up. Emotional conversations different than the actual budget financial conversation. So for you guys, what's the history of her feeling of being in control or being seen, or like she had a say in things financially? What's the history of that been for you guys?
I mean, she has had a good say. It's been organic, I have to say. We are equal partners in spending. She's also frugal and such, but we never had a goal to go. We never really had. I mean, we put our kids in religious private schools. I think that's one thing we agreed on, and a lot of money goes there. But even that, we're questioning now: is it really worth it in the grander scheme of things that we want to achieve? But no, she's always had control, and I've always had an open conversation. But I mean, she would definitely appreciate me taking on a leadership to set a vision. She's waiting for that. I mean, I would say, and she is, and I know, knowing her, I know what she also. I know that the values that both of us share. So I can, with some high level of confidence, I know the vision that we would like to have, but we just never worked a plan and a strategy to commit to it to make it happen.
Sounds like a lot of great foundation already that the two of you have been doing together, and your skills with finance.
Yeah, except I just never was disciplined enough to make the goal, make progress towards whatever long-term goal we have. So, okay, you guys want to go on vacation? Let's go on vacation, even if that was detrimental to the long-term strategy.
Yeah. So make sure you do the visioning first separately, even though you've said you believe that you know what she wants, or you've spoken about that. Like, yeah, come in with those opinions, with those impressions to begin, right? And then have a fun conversation about it. Again, you've got to do your own work to flush out your fear, do all that as long as you need to, right? Write down the previous 3 months, like really face and get through your own fear around this. Because then when you have a visioning conversation with your woman, you don't want to bring any fear into that. You don't want to bring any like, oh my God, how much money's in the bank kind of fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
In my case, I mean, she always had full autonomy over everything. I mean, over her money, whatever money she made, I never interfered with anything. I didn't even know how much was in her account, and she had full autonomy. And I think that was the other extreme, because from that account, she was buying property and she was hiring a divorce attorney and all that. And I never knew anything about it until she moved out. So, and my friends were laughing at me, how come your wife is buying a property and hiring attorneys and you have no clue what's going on? So in that she had full autonomy, but she had the concerns, like as Jeff says, about being listened to, because the small things like when we were painting the house, I mean, we had to select the colors to paint. So I gave her the painting palette and I asked her to choose it. She just casually picked one or two and she just tossed it aside and she didn't seem interested. But I'm the guy who likes all the colors to fit together, like I don't choose anything in isolation. I mean, different rooms have different colors, but all of them have to blend together. So I spend a good amount of time thinking about it and considering the combinations. So I did that, and I did pretty much the whole project, what I wanted to do. And I asked her a couple of times for input, but she didn't seem interested. So I thought she's not interested. So I did that on my own. But she's been harboring resentment over that over several years. And then after several years, she says, you just do whatever the hell you want. I said, I asked you, man. You just casually marked something and you threw it aside. It looked like you didn't care at all. So, I mean, we didn't have any financial issues because both of us make good salaries and both of us are spendthrifts. We don't like to spend too much. So there was no financial issue as such, but some small issues like this, or in the garden, if she wanted to plant some vegetables, and I liked a nice orderly garden with nice flowers, and vegetable plants and all can mess up the whole look. So I wasn't so keen on that. But I mean, if she wanted it, she doesn't press for it. She may have said it once, and if I don't take it up, she doesn't say anything, and she just withdraws. And I didn't know why she was withdrawing. So that's what was going on.
Yeah. Part of that shared vision, right, Harry? And many men have joint accounts and then one each individual account that excess money goes to that you can spend and do whatever you want. But everything comes into the middle accounts first. That's how I do it. Yeah. But your point there is, I think part of your point was she's going to rewrite the past, even though that's not something she was interested in. And this is part of our theme of today of, is the marriage breakdown all my fault? Is she right? Well, no, it's both of your responsibilities. Yeah. Thanks, Harry. Good to see you. Yeah, Nevin, come on in. We only have about 2 minutes left on our call tonight. Nevin, go for it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Hey, great call. Really relate to a lot of what the guys are saying, especially the kind of coming from a fear-based position, which I've been oscillating. Sometimes I feel like I'm empowered and I'm making something from that position, but then especially anything involving the kids, a discussion that might come up is, well, we want to renew our son's passport. And I'm like, well, is she going to then take off back to Russia with them and I'm never going to see them again? Or she just wants to renew the passport, like stuff like that. I go down those kind of catastrophic thinking kind of scenarios, and yeah, I don't know how to kind of stop that.
That's
Yeah,
that's a great question. And in the amount of time that we have right this moment, a great homework or journaling prompt for you, Nevin, is what am I not owning, or where am I not reaching out for freedom? Another way to say what's the opposite of freedom is like an anchor around your ankle, right? Like cuffs around your ankles or rocks in your backpack. So what rocks in my backpack am I still holding on to? What am I not willing or wanting to let go of? These are fantastic questions around that. But that's a very visceral concern. Like, is she going to fly them out of the country? And then what am I going to do?
Yeah, no, totally. And I like don't want to accuse her of it. And then that's automatically puts her in the defensive, but then it is a valid concern. But is it, or is it just me, going off the deep end with all these, catastrophic thoughts? And in a similar way, dating, not exact, that's not the same as, with the kids, but like similar coming from fear. Like we had an agreement going into our separation that we would be just working on ourselves and not be seeing anyone else. And I have a pretty strong feeling and kind of some quasi evidence that she's probably seeing somebody right now, whether it's casual or just whatever, but it doesn't matter. But I'm not even interested in seeing other women right now. So then part of me is like, well, I should go see other women because she's seeing men, and that's not a strong place to come from either. I don't have any desire to do that. I just want to do my thing right now. If a woman comes into my space and that's cool, and I draw someone in, okay, sure, but I'm not pursuing right now.
Yeah.
But it really bothers me that she might be. So then I feel like I'm just I feel like I'm constantly kind of leaning into this weaker place. I don't like it.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it.
good.
I mean, this is the core of the Stoic triangle, right? We can't control whether she dates or not. And so putting expectations on things outside of our control leads to incredibly difficult emotions: fear, pain, resentment, anger, because they're all pointing to something that we can't control. Right? So what am I not willing to let go of, or what are still the rocks in my backpack? Where am I not moving toward freedom? And I say this with compassion, but I say this to every man who talks about a separation agreement. Okay, you could write in there, we're not going to see other people. She can do whatever she wants. Right?
Yeah.
You as a man, deepening your masculinity, you're going to want to move toward freedom. You're going to want to move toward responsibility and knowing yourself, because that's your masculine grounding. Moving toward nothingness, no responsibility, and freedom. Like that's ultimately the goal of the penetration of masculine, is freedom. The ultimate goal of the feminine is love and connection. So when she doesn't have a masculine container in her life any longer, when she doesn't have a relationship, she's instinctually going to be drawn toward love and connection and relationship. And it may not be a formal relationship, it may not be a formal dating relationship, but she's naturally going to look for a masculine container to pour her femininity into, whether that's workaholic, or her kids, like the tasking of kids, or making herself overly busy with work and like a new college degree and kids where she has like no life other, or another man. And one of those things is going to happen. It's sort of physics of femininity. And that's painful, but I talk about that with men all the time, is if you're getting separated, it's because she doesn't want to have a relationship right now. Like she can say whatever nice things that she wants to say, but she's saying, I don't want a relationship with you. I don't want to be in your masculine container or your frame. And so she's over here flowing like water, most women, flowing like water, wanting a place to pour that water. And of course, it's painful for us to think about that, but it's back to, where am I not moving toward freedom? Where am I not moving toward responsibility? What rocks in my backpack am I afraid to put down? Where am I trying to control something that I really can't control? And those emotions are pointing to these questions. It's awesome. Thanks, Devin. See you guys next week. Ciao, guys.